Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atiq Ahmed Bhatti, a fourth generation homeopath with over 25 years of professional experience and practice in this field of healing. The Homeopathy Health Show is the online voice of homeopathy around the world, promoting and raising awareness of this truly unique system of healing, which is suitable for all ages, young and old. Every week I invite guests from the world of homeopathy to come and share their experiences, their work, offer insights, and essentially talk all things homeopathy. Why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast button to listen to the latest episodes. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Hi everybody, I do hope you're well and hope and pray, as always, that it remains that way. Now in episode 52, I had the good fortune to welcome eminent homeopath Dr. Rajan Sankaran to the show. And indeed, we had a wonderful opportunity to talk about Dr. Sankaran's work, the sensation method, and the nature of disease, or rather of being unwell. Now, you can listen to episode 52 and all the episodes of the Homeopathy Health Show on all the major podcast platforms, or you can visit ukhealthradio.com or my YouTube channel at like_treatslike. Or why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and you can listen on demand from there. Now, I am truly delighted to welcome Dr. Sankaran back for part 2 of our conversation. And in this episode, I'll be asking him about Raga Therapy. Dr. Rajan Sankaran, welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. Thank you so very much. I welcome you with open arms.
Well, thanks a lot for that, and it's a pleasure to be here.
We have a lot of students listening to these podcasts. So before we do go into Raga Therapy, which is the main topic of today, and I know this is it's something that you are very passionate about as well. I wanted to just very, very briefly, if I may, ask you about the newer miasms that you mentioned, namely malaria, ringworm, and leprosy, and what led you to include these for our understanding. And I do know that you've mentioned them in some detail in your new book, which is called Schema 2.0.
Well, my work for the last 40 plus years in homeopathy has been to create a system which is reproducible and which is easy to follow, and that leads to more consistent and predictable results. So this has been the aim of all the work that I have done. To make the long story short, I would say that in the last 3 or 4 years, all my work has kind of culminated into a system which I call as the 5-finger method. And what this means is that in homeopathy, the idea is to match the patient with the remedy. There has to be an accurate match. And how can we ensure that this match is a correct match? For this, I understood that we have to match 5 aspects of the patient with the remedy. When these 5 aspects match, then we have a really, really good match. The first of this aspect is called the superclass, which is the basic dynamic of a person. The second is called kingdom and subkingdom, which is the basic sensitivity of the person, whether it is an animal kind of sensitivity, a plant kind of sensitivity, or a mineral kind of sensitivity. And the third aspect is the miasm, which basically describes the pace, the speed, and the degree of hope or desperation that is inherent in the person's state. The fourth quality is the characteristic symptoms, and the fifth is the keynote or the source qualities where we actually match what is really, really peculiar in the patient to which source in nature that kind of quality is found. So if we match these five qualities, our results are more assured. Now, the third of these aspects is called miasm. Originally, Hahnemann proposed three miasms, which is psora, sycosis, and syphilis, where the psora had an aspect which is hopeful that the solution is obtainable. It is, you can solve the problem by some effort. In sycosis, the pace is that you cannot solve it, but you can live with it, you see. And in syphilis, the pace is there is no hope and there is going to be a destruction. So these are the three fundamental types of pace or desperation you can see. And this helps us to locate the remedy. So if you want to see what is the pace in the patient, it is hopeful, you need to find a hopeful remedy like sulfur. If you see that something is stuck and doesn't move, but it's not fatal, you need to find a remedy with that pace like thuja. And if you see that there is a destructive pace, then you need to find a remedy that has that kind of pace like mercurius. So this was the basic premise, you see. So of course, it's not just one aspect that needs to be matched, but this is one of the aspects. You can say that there are three coordinates in each person. One is the superclass, one is the kingdom, and one is the miasm. And the remedy lies at the cross point of these three coordinates. So it must have all these three qualities in that remedy. Now, when I started to study the miasms, I accepted these three basic miasms of Hahnemann, psora, sycosis, and syphilis, but I found that there are cases which do not strictly fit into one of this, and they lie somewhere in between. It's like you can say that these three miasms of Hahnemann are the major stops in a train journey, for example. But there are many intermediate smaller stops which are also very important. And I tried to locate what these stops are, and that is why the new miasms or the classification has come. For example, between psora and sycosis, that means between hope and fixity, there comes the miasm ringworm, which says, well, if I make an effort, I may get success, but if I don't get success, I will live with the situation. You see, that pace is ringworm miasm. So in this way, I identified leprosy, cancer, tubercular, as well as malaria, acute miasm, typhoid miasm, creating a system of 10 miasms into which any remedy or patient can be classified. And this basic idea is not theoretical, it's not just for a theory, but actually this classification helps us to shortlist the remedy along with the other aspects of the case.
Would you say that it's pretty comprehensive now then with the 10 miasms that you've mentioned?
Yes, because this idea of 10 miasms I came up with about 25 years ago and have not been able to add one more after that because all the cases fit into this 10 miasms.
That's amazing. I would, further to this for the, especially for the students and new graduates of homeopathy listening to this show, I would say that it's very worthwhile also looking at the work that Dr. Sankaran has done as far as the books published, but specifically a new book published, which is called Schema 2.0, which is now available, which the miasms actually take us on to something called the wise process, which you've very eloquently put in the book, which is to do with witnessing inner, song, and then the experience. Would you very kindly just explain the thought process behind that as well?
Well, you know, there has been a kind of evolution of the ideas from the beginning. So, first of all, what we understand is that the real problem in each person lies in the way that person perceives external reality and therefore responds to it in that particular way. And this is where we as individuals differ. Given the same situation, you will see that each one perceives and responds to it in a completely different way than the other person. So, where does this difference lie? Because this difference is the root of each one's stress or each one's angst, you can say also. So, studying this, the first thing that came to mind was that it is a difference in how you perceive, how you see actually, how you visualize, how you imagine the other situation to be. For example, there is a boss and he's quite rude to his subordinates, maybe. So, how does one person perceive it? One person perceives, oh, he's treating me like a slave. The other person says, well, I feel as if he's crushing me under his shoe. So each one has a certain different perception or imagination, which metaphorically he can express. But going deeper to this imagination or perception, what we also call as delusion level, is the idea of sensation. And sensation means not how you visualize it, but how you actually experience it within you in the form of, one would say, even physical sensations. So you see, he treats you like a slave. So how do you experience this? Then he says, I feel tight, bound. I feel suffocated. I feel as if I cannot breathe, etc., etc. So, from the level of imagination, one goes deeper into the pattern of the individual and sees that there is actually a sensory experience that is experienced both in mind and body at the same time. This level is deeper than the imagination or perception level. Now, when you probe this sensation and say, okay, you feel tight, how does this feel? When you ask the patient this question, what normally happens is that they start expressing that experience through certain hand gestures or through certain sounds. Their hands may come together and close in on each other, and there may be a sound that comes from their mouth that says, ah! This is how. What is this? So this level goes even deeper than the level of sensory experience to the level of what we can call as the energetic pattern that underlies the sensory experience, which in turn underlies the perception or imagination. So you just go deeper and deeper, and the deepest level of experience is this energetic experience. Now, when you reach to that level, which actually corresponds to the super class of the person, that is the dynamic. So when I say that we have 5 fingers, the first is super class that actually decides the energetic pattern. The kingdom and sub-kingdom determines the sensitivity level, the sensation level. You see? So when you go to that level of super class or dynamic or energy pattern that underlies everything, that's where you can actually go to the depth of the case, and your prescription is really, really accurate at that level. But the problem is that during case taking, to take the person to that depth becomes sometimes a very big problem, because usually human beings, especially educated people, intellectual people, etc., they live more at an intellectual level, not very aware of what their emotions are, what their imaginations are, what their sensory perceptions are. So when you ask them, how do you experience? How do you experience? They are at loss for word. They don't know. They've never been aware of it. So what to do here? So it is at this point that about 3-4 years ago, by accident, I discovered that if instead of asking them what their experience is, if we are able to make them project onto some another individual, you see, whom they don't even know, then it's easier for them to bring it out, you see. So the wise process started like this. So for example, I would show a picture, a picture of a statue or a picture of a tree or whatever. And I would say, okay, use your imagination and tell me what this person in the statue, what is his or her situation in life? What is she facing? Use your imagination. So we turn the attention from themselves to a third person. And then they are able to tell a story of that third person. And from that story, we are able to take them deeper into their sensory experience and into the energetic pattern. So we discovered this wise process about 4 or 5 years ago. And what is very interesting also is that when we started using this wise, there are many wise processes. Picture is just one of them. There are many wise processes. But the idea is the same, is to project into something else rather than talk about yourself. So it's easier. So what we discovered was that the wise process not only um, made our homeopathic remedy selection more accurate, but also the process itself, through creating an awareness in the individual, had a therapeutic effect. And in fact, many people felt much healed in a way after the process, which actually started with homeopathic case taking but landed up to be a therapeutic process in itself. And so we organize retreats where we would not even talk about homeopathy. We would just do these wise processes and facilitate people going into their own pattern inside. And we found that it had a very, very beneficial effect. Then we started thinking, how can we use this on a more wider scale? And we came up with the idea of doing online wise workshops. And I did two major wise workshops. Actually, one was in Germany, where we had 750 people participating. Wow. And one in Brazil with 350 people participating. And by a process of creating, people to partner each other and facilitate each other, we could extend the benefits of wise to a much wider audience. And what resulted was that when we gave a kind of assessment of the quality of life before and after the wise processes, it showed a statistically significant difference, a difference that persisted even 6 months after the processes were completed. So that's where the wise comes in.
Yeah, as you were saying that, you gave the example of intellectuals. And also business people sometimes can find that they need to be strong, and they almost develop this superficial personality as a layer, that they have to act in a certain way, they have to be a certain way, especially if you're a boss, good boss or bad boss, irrespective. So this wise process, I was just thinking, is would it be right to say that by using such a clever system, by giving it away, and using it from a third person perspective, you're actually removing that personality that the person comes with, which is preventing him or her from actually opening up because you're going
Absolutely,
at it from a
absolutely.
different
Because
way.
then you see, they can say anything about the third person
Mm,
without their own self image getting damaged in any way. So they can say that that person is malicious and that person is violent and that person faces a lot of threat, etc., etc. And what they are speaking about is themselves, you know. So this is in a way of going deeper without, disturbing their own persona in that sense.
mm. It's almost in reverse that you can actually get them better without having to hit that first layer or barrier, which is their professional self, which is I'm not going to share my personal feelings. I'm a strong person, I'm strong-willed, and I'm not going to be in that put into that uncomfortable situation. It's a very interesting, actually. I'm just thinking about it as you're saying, as you're talking about it as well. It's interesting how you can open up. There's so many different avenues, and this wise process seems to be so perfectly aligned to that.
Yes, while we are on that topic, I might inform the listeners that I have written a book on the subject, which is called From Shadow to Light: The Wise Processes in Homeopathic Case Taking. And that's a book which can give them more information about this.
And that, Dr. Rajan, that's available in online, I'm quite sure.
Yes, it is available online, and especially you can get it from the my publishing company, which is called www.rajansankaran.com. And in this website, you can get a lot of information about the work I have done, including the Raga therapy, which we may be speaking about now.
Now, Dr. Rajan Sankaran, in the first part of the podcast, episode 52, we touched upon Raga therapy and you gave us an example as well. But I would ask you once again just to explain the objectives or principles of Raga therapy itself. Now, just before Dr. Rajan Sankaran answers that, do note that if you look at, if you find Dr. Rajan Sankaran on Instagram, there are many, many reels where Dr. Sankaran is using Raga therapy. So please do check those out because they really are very, very interesting indeed. So you can find him just by typing Dr. Rajan Sankaran on Instagram, and you'll find his handle. So I was just going to ask you about Raga therapy and how it came about and the objectives and principles, really, and then whether you could give us some examples.
Well, it's a long story, and I'll try to, tell you all the aspects of it. First of all, we know that music has healing abilities, and music therapy is something that is known, you see. But how do we know which music is healing for which person? It cannot be just random.
Hmm.
You cannot say, listen to music and you will be healed. There has to be some kind of individualization of music also, just like there is an individualization of the homeopathic remedy, you see. So I started working on this idea more than 25 years ago. In fact, in my book called The Substance of Homeopathy, which also is the book that describes all the miasms. In this book, I have mentioned about my foray into music as a healing agent. And I use the same idea of homeopathy, which is that like cures like. So if a music is healing to a person, it must be one that matches the person's state. Then only it can heal. That's, you see, this is the principle of homeopathy. So, how do we know which music matches that individual state? This is the first question. Now, at the same time, I was getting interested in Indian classical music, and I was learning Indian classical music from a teacher. And what I understood about Indian classical music, that it is a system of melodies which are called ragas. Each raga is basically a harmonic pattern of notes and a specific combination of notes in the major and the minor scale. And it is sung in a particular way. Within that grammar, one had the freedom to improvise and to go anywhere as long as you stuck to the basic grammar of that particular melody or raga. In Indian classical music, it is known that each raga has an individuality, that each raga has a season, each raga has a time of the day, each raga has a specific mood, etc., etc. So all this is already mentioned in Indian classical music. So it became quite easy for me to understand that if I was to identify, which music we must use, it has to be Indian classical music, in my knowledge, because here you see each raga as a specific, entity, as a specific remedy even. There's a standardization of the raga in terms of which notes are used and how they are used. So you have a standardized, melody there. Number one. And number two, each raga is said to have an individuality in the music itself. So what I did, I picked up 4 ragas and I started to, in the homeopathic fashion of proving a remedy, started to play this raga to groups of people, and asked them to note down, to record what was the effect of that raga on them at a mental and emotional and physical level. I played the raga, a specific raga, for example, Raga Yaman, to groups of people in 5 continents. I played it in India, I played it in Africa, I played it in Israel, I played it in Russia, I played it in America, I played it in Australia. And very surprisingly, I found that the effect was similar. What people recorded as the effect on them was similar across continents and all kinds of cultural, divide. The effect of the raga was more or less the same. And each raga had a specific effect, much different from the other one. So this was my first step into the understanding of how we can use raga as a remedy. And I thought, if I can do the same for a larger number of ragas, then I would have, very specific indications for each raga. And if I found a patient with a similar state, I could prescribe, you might say, prescribe that raga for that individual. This is how it started. But for a long time after that initial foray, I had put it on cold storage because I was very busy in developing ideas within homeopathy itself in terms of sensations, miasms, synergy, in terms of all these various aspects. And that was a very adventurous and very rewarding journey that culminated, as I told you, in this 5-finger method now. So the raga was put on a back burner. But in the meantime, the idea which I just talked to you about, the various levels of experience, which is the imagination level, the sensation level, and the energetic pattern level. And above the more superficial to that is the emotional level. So emotions, imaginations, sensations, and energy pattern. These 4 levels became quite obvious to me. And now when I took up the study of ragas, I would now study them at all these levels. At an emotional level, what do they produce? At an imagination, what people can imagine when they see the raga? What sensory experience do they produce? And what energetic pattern do they produce? At that point, I realized that while you can say, counseling, you can say, when we talk of counseling, counseling can work at an emotional level. Counseling can work at the level of imagination, what affected you, what situation, etc. Homeopathy works at the level of sensation, which sensation you have and which kingdom, which remedy matches that sensation. But then I understood that ragas or music actually is energetic pattern. Basically, sound is an energy form. And when we say the harmonic pattern of notes, we are talking about an energetic pattern, which is, I imagine, even deeper than homeopathic remedies. So, and what can, work at that level, if not music? At an energetic level, we have music. So then I went into the idea of ragas with much more enthusiasm, seeing that as the next frontier in therapy. And so then uh, the COVID lockdown uh, provided me the opportunity to do that, because we were all locked up in our homes, not knowing what to do.
Yes, difficult
I
time.
said, I think I will have a ready group of people with nothing to do. At least we can all together create this thing. So then I created these, webinars where every other day I would sing a particular raga for about 15 to 17 minutes to a group of people from all over the world. We had people from New Zealand, Israel, Australia, India, because I wanted a multicultural, thing. That is the first thing. We created this and I would sing. But what is interesting is, what is it that I would sing? I would sing the pure notes. I would not sing any words, because I think words address the mind, words address the imagination, words address the emotions. But we didn't want at that level. We wanted everything to be expressed, but our direction should be to the energetic pattern level. So I sang pure notes. In Hindustani classical music, it is known as alap, where you don't sing words. And in Indian music, classical music, words are not important at all. The melody is important. So I could have used instrumental music also, but because at that time, you see, to get a instrumentalist, etc., was not that easy. So I said, I will sing the notes without any words, number one. Number two, I will not use any kind of embellishments. I will sing the pure raga, because I have the experience that most of the time when professional musicians perform, they are very, very keen, you can say, to show their skills and their virtuosity. And they gain a lot of, it's beautiful and they are really appreciated and there's applause and standing ovations and all that. But I think in that, the very essence of the melody is taking a back seat. And I can tell you one experience I had 30 years ago. I was invited to the home of a patient who was an amateur sitar player, he has never performed and he will not perform in this lifetime. You can imagine that. He was actually making umbrellas for a living. He had a company that made umbrellas. This was just his hobby. And we went to his house, few of us, and he said, I'll play for you the sitar. And I tell you, the next 1 hour, it was the best music I've heard in my life, because he did not perform. He did, he did not show his skill. He just played the notes of the music. And that had the deepest impact on me. So therefore, I played it to a multicultural audience. I sang it without words. I did not use any embellishments and I did not use rhythm. Normally, Indian music is with tabla, with rhythm. I didn't use rhythm because I just wanted the notes to
Mm,
go deep within. So these are the kind of, conditions I imposed on myself. And then we collated the experience, the records of all these people. 35 people were there in that group. We took all of that together, we arranged it, we kind of understood it, and then we proved like this 26 ragas. 26 major ragas. In Indian classical music, there are hundreds of ragas, but some of them, like homeopathic polycrest remedies, are very famous. So we took 26 of them, and then we created a kind of a, you know, uh, app, which is called the Raga Therapy app,
mm,
where we incorporated all this knowledge that we had. And this app, when you open it, it's available, of course, on Android and on Apple also, and it is for free. So when you open the app, you are asked a series of questions. What is your emotion? What would you like it to be? What is your imagination? What is your experience? What you would like it to be? And if you click on all those choices, then through a algorithm that is already embedded in the app, it chooses the appropriate raga that matches your state at that moment. And at the click of a button, my voice will come and I will sing you that raga for 15 minutes. This is the Raga Therapy app. Now, to confirm that what I'm doing is on the right lines, what I did is that through a very, very, very talented musician who is my patient and a friend now, I got together four musicians, a male singer, female singer, sitar player, and flute player. And we made them record four different ragas, you know,
mm,
by all these various methods. And then we did the proving of these four ragas again on those 35 people. And then we collated that information, and to our great pleasure, you can say, each raga had a specificity. It matched very nicely the effects of the raga across, whether you are a male singer, female singer, sitar player, or flute player, it was the same. And each raga had its own individuality. So my theory that the raga has specificity was established by that. So this is what we have done. Now the Raga Therapy app is already there, and people have written very, very positive comments about the effects that it has had on them. So it's worth a try. I recommend this app to my patients, and they also report positive effects. And so this is an app that can, um, it's not just limited to homeopaths. I mean, music is universal. So
mm.
you can recommend it to anybody, to your friends, or you can try it on yourself, to your patients. And I believe that it can complement any therapy that you are taking. So this is what I have done so far.
That really is amazing. And it's interesting how music is so, the vibrations that music can instill, the vibrations that it gives out can resonate so nicely with somebody under a certain crisis, even. And as you were talking about raga therapy, I was thinking of the great classical composers and how amazing when you listen to even classical music, how it affects you. It's not pop and it's not rock and it's not all this the current trends, but it can be so defining, those moments of listening to classical music itself, and how it can change your perception of things. And some people actually find that that's all they need in their life as far as health restoration or vitality or just overall well-being. um, so it's truly amazing. You've already mentioned where the app is available, but we are sort of coming to the end of the podcast, and I did want to ask you for some examples. Maybe you can sing us some ragas so that we can get an idea, really?
Yeah, I can. So, what I would first suggest is that there are many ways of listening to music. You can listen through your head or through your ears, etc. And also, there are many ways of appreciating music. You can say it's a wonderful music, or you know, whatever. But or you can hear it through songs and enjoy the songs, and all these are valid, relevant, and good. But the deepest effect of music that you can get, especially classical music, is when you don't listen through your head or even your ears, but allow the music to kind of take over inside, to kind of possess you or to fill you up. And then you kind of merge with it in some way so that there is a shared resonance
Mm.
between the musician and the and both of you in some sense disappear also, and what remains is just the spirit of that particular melody. So this is a very nice way to listen, and as you do that, you will start to get some experiences within your system. You something will happen, and just be attentive to that. That's all. And the best way obviously is to keep your eyes closed and to just let it come into you in that sense.
Mm.
So the what I will sing for you is a raga called Darbari. Darbar is a name for a king's, court. Darbar is a king's court, and this raga was composed, or you can say created, by the court composer of King Akbar, Emperor Akbar of the
Mm.
Mughal era. And the name of the composer is Tansen, who was one of the greatest of all Indian music composers. And the story is told that when Akbar came home and he was completely, laden with the heavy, onerous responsibilities of being emperor, and things were not going good, and the task before him was just too much,
Mm.
and there was a kind of desperation in him. How is he going to do all of this? It's too much. And he didn't see much hope even, etc. Then he asked Tansen to compose a raga that could help him. And Tansen, being a true homeopath, without knowing it, he he composed him a raga that exactly matched the state. That raga is called Darbari, which I will sing for you. Best would be to the listeners should just sit back, relax, close your eyes, and allow this raga to come into you and see what happens. It's just an experiment. Dhana, dhana, na, na, de re de re na na de re na na de re na de na re na de re na de re na 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 dere na na ma ba da 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 ni pa ma ba da ni sa ni da ni pa ma pa ga ma re sa da ni re sa ta de re na dere na 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 ta dere na dere na 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 ta dere na dere na ta dere na dere na dere na Once again, I want to refer listeners to the website www.rajansankaran.com, where you can read more about Raga Therapy. I have written things on it. And when you can also read about my books, especially the latest one, which is called Super Classes in Homeopathy, which I think it will be a game changer. Actually, it is gaining a lot of popularity because it makes practice, not only practice, but even the way we view life and we view ourselves and people. It gives a completely nice paradigm by which you can see things. And of course, it helps a lot in homeopathy. So many of these are in the website. You can have a look. And thank you so much for having me. And these are things I'm very passionate about. So it's very nice to share.
I do hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Homeopathy Health Show. Please do support the show by clicking follow on my socials. Remember, the more exposure the podcast receives, the better for homeopathy around the world. You can find me on Instagram by searching for @like_treatslike, and on both Facebook and TikTok by searching for @like_treatslike. So let's promote the voice of homeopathy on radio and podcast around the world together. Don't forget to visit me online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast tab. Here you'll be able to see all the guests that have joined me on the show so far, and of course you can stream on demand the latest episode to your mobile, tablet or PC. Until next time, stay safe and take care.